a society that kind of comes out and tries to put a trajectory on what you should look like, how you should be. But when I became familiar with narcissism, I realized that I could have lost my life a long time ago as a result of it. I understood the state of what caused my deep depression. Because before the tragic event that occurred in my home, we'll talk about it a little later, I was going through some things and trying to work, balance my life. I was fighting for my marriage. I was fighting for all these things for my children to finish high school, to go to college, and all of these things. And I was juggling these things. But I did not know that narcissism was the catalyst of some of the unsuccess and the failures, what I call failures, in my marriage, which made it impossible for us to reconcile and move forward.
Wow, wow. So, in thinking about that, you didn't even know what you were dealing with. And then you came to the understanding of what narcissism was and how it had impacted your marriage and your relationship. Thinking about trauma, how do people best move from trauma? If they're trying to move forward, how would you suggest that people move from trauma, Isa?
You have to be able to move forward. And the only way you can move forward is through truth telling. I came to a truth in my life when I found out about narcissistic abuse, narcissistic behavior. That was the truth telling that I had to come. And so everyone has to be able to say what their truth is. My truth, Tammie, is not the same as your truth. Your
Mm,
truth is not the same as my truth. But we all have a truth. And in dealing with our truths, we can begin to start reconciling. See, truth and reconciliation go together. Once you understand the truth, then you know what steps and what measure you need to take to proceed towards how do I reconcile it? How do I take what is out of balance and put it back in balance? And so once you deal with truth, reconciliation, then you can start to move forward with restoring your life,
mm.
restoration, redemption. So it depends on what your truth is. And the main thing that I had to do in recognizing the truth, my truth, is I had to get some therapy.
So therapy is okay? Do I hear you saying that it is okay for people who are believers, people are faith, people who are strong? It's okay for them to get therapy?
Absolutely, Tammie.
Mm,
We are still less than 10% as a race, as a culture of people, African Americans, that seek professional help when we're in crisis. We're still
mm,
less than 10% that will go and get a mental health professional, that will go to get a psychologist, will go into psychiatry. And we have trauma in our DNA as a result just from us being descendants of former slaves who were stolen from Africa and then brought over here and then became a product, not even human, for this country and what we survived through all of that. So trauma and that part of trauma, we don't have a lot of experience with it. And I wanted to move away from it. I wanted to heal. I wanted to feel better so bad. I wanted to, but I didn't know where to begin. When you are dealing with a lot of chaos in your life, and it's beyond your control, you become debilitated in your thinking.
mm,
You become debilitated in your movement. You
mhm.
even it's even hard to breathe when you're going through a traumatic experience. So we have to get to the point where we go from being harmed to being restored to being at the end can go to our healing, to heal.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even on that note, I want to say this. I think, when I think about Mindset to Millions, of course, this platform is to help people to understand the value of being able to be wealthy across the board. And I call it to be healthy, wealthy, and to be wise. So that's why we're talking about how to move forward, how to move from trauma. Trauma can be the death of a family member. Trauma can be a ending of a marriage. Trauma can be a ill child, illness in your own body. So when we're thinking about moving forward and moving from trauma, I'm hearing you say a therapist is good to have. Having a counselor, a coach, or a therapist is good to have. Let me add to this and ask you, how do you think trauma can affect someone's mindset as it relates to them receiving their millions? How can trauma stop you from getting to your wealthy place?
Because you don't feel any longer. The traumatization has actually stopped you from being able to bring balance. Your life is literally out of balance. It's kind of like what I talk about when I'm in speaking engagements, when I'm talking to people. I give an example of a life reconciliation sheet. I don't know if you remember, but I don't know if they do it to this day because we do a lot of computerized bank reconciliation stuff. But before, you used to get a paper statement, and on the back of that paper statement was a reconciliation sheet. And in that, you're supposed to take everything that you went through and you write it on the right side according to what's on that statement.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take everything that you deposited into it, meaning cash, money that you put in there, to cover those withdrawals. At
Mm-hmm.
the end of that statement is a balance. Now, that balance is either operating positively, prayerfully, that you are just abundantly, that you're wealthy. It may even be just zero, meaning just zeroed out, or it may be insufficient. So
Mm,
when I throw out insufficient, such as it is with life, insufficiency is just that. You're lacking. You don't have enough. And what we've done is that we've withdrawn. We do a withdrawal in our personal lives that we're always taking, and we're not replenishing. We're not doing enough deposits to balance everything that's going out of us.
wow.
Everything that's going out of us. And so what we
Wow.
have to do, and when I get people to look at that, half the time the scale is tilted. Too
Mm-hmm.
much withdrawals, too much taking away out of us, the children, the house, the shopping, the caring for. I had to care for my elderly parents. Everything, all of these things that come that take away from me, and then I sit there and don't do what I need to do. Let's talk about what those deposits are: exercise, diet, uh, doing your meditation,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual, going to church, whatever. I told you what I believe, but of course, anyone can believe whatever they choose. But we are not depositing, drinking enough water, hydration, those types of things that we need to replenish. We need to deposit these things: self love, a hug, a touch, going on vacations, whatever it is for you. We have
Nice.
to deposit in order to
Nice.
offset everything that we are giving away.
And
It's
I
being
like
in
that.
balance.
Yes, I like that because what happens a lot of times when we're coming out of trauma or we're dealing with grief, when I think about money, mindset to millions, the trauma can affect you in a way also that you start to question, do you belong at the table? I've been through all these things, so do I deserve wealth? Do I deserve to be able to live this life? Especially if you're looking around at other people's trauma. I heard people say they have felt guilty because they were in a better place than maybe their family members was. And so sometimes it can become generational. So this is good. This is good. I want to look in the chat. We have people in our chat who have joined us, and we want to first of all welcome you all. Thank you so much for your patience earlier with the sound. We see we have some great people here with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, Veronica, Ronnie's in the building. Aniko, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Yvette, DMV is in the building. Yes, yes, yes. So good to see you all. Yes, California is in the house. Yes, so good to have you. Christina, Isaac, thank you. Thank you all for letting us know, D-Bone, that you weren't hearing before the volume. Yeah, just want to make sure Tasha, Brenda Taylor, Tyra, thank you. North Carolina is in the building. Thank you for joining us. Why am I stopping and doing this? Because I want to say to our audience, if you have questions, put them in the chat. Isa has shared with me that she would be more than glad to answer any questions that you all have around the subject that we're speaking on tonight. So feel free to put any questions that you may have in the chat. So Isa, it's a word that you use called brilliancy and brilliancy mindset, and thinking about trauma and thinking about grief and thinking about everything that people go through in life. When you use the word brilliancy mindset, what are you talking about?
For me, brilliancy means exceptional. We have to have a mindset that allows us to rise up, to raise up, and be resilient no matter what state we're in, no matter what's going on around us, no matter what's going on in the earth, no matter what's going on in the political climate, no matter what's going on. We have to have a mindset
Hmm.
of being exceptional in some unexceptional unexceptional times. We're living in some really vast and evil days. I mean, we
Thank
have
you.
a lot going on in this world that we live in. And we have to rise above that. We have to be exceptional in our mindset to think about what we need to be, how we need to be, because trauma is trauma. Just like you were saying before, your trauma may not be as traumatic as mine, but it's still trauma. Trauma traumatizes. Trauma could be from, like you said, a death. It could be grieving. It could be the loss of a child. It could be from some
Mhm.
type of surviving a crime, like I had, being a survivor of crime. It could be something that watching on the TV, Michael Brown, a child lying on the community, lying on the asphalt, riddled with bullets, in his community, uncovered intentionally. Usually they
Mm.
cover a body. They left this young man, this boy, this child, 16, he's just a child, left him uncovered for all to see, the world, his community, because he was headed home. So where his body lay, you could see from the balcony from your apartment, you can see this young man lying there. So
Mm.
those images, those types of atrocities, there's wars. I'm a former military spouse. My daughter is retired military. My former husband was in 3 wars, 3. And they came back with some level of trauma. You cannot spend 5 minutes in a war zone and not have some level of traumatization.
I agree. I certainly agree with that. And we see a lot of people come back with PTS. And you don't even have to go to a war to have that. You could see Michael Brown. You could, look at a lot of news and realize that the trauma from what it is that you're viewing has affected you. One of the things that I often say around the whole mindset, the millions, if we're thinking about healing, if we're thinking about getting better, what are we depositing within us? What are we looking at? What are we looking at? What are we reading? What are we associating? Who and what are we associating ourselves with? So if we're already dealing with trauma because of life, one of our other radio hosts says, my great friend Dr. Mercia says, life be life. And if we know that life be life, and then on top of that, if I'm not putting in the things that are good, the things that are wholesome, the things that are healthy, how am I going to be impacted? I'm going to be impacted greatly. So not only do I have to process through grief and trauma, but I got to add in the good things that's going to help me get through the trauma and the drama, right? And the life be life. And then on top of that, I have to get a therapist because Isa said it's okay to have a therapist, and I do have a therapist. And then I may need a coach to help me coach through the trauma and the grief. So, Isa, it sounds like it's steps to all of this. Talk to us a little bit about, we know that, and yes, Aniko, JM is what I'm going to say because I don't want to mess anybody's name up. You have to learn it takes work to be healthy, and you need a support system. Okay. We see Miss Karen has a question. Can trauma be a good thing? Isa, what do you think about that? Can trauma be a good thing?
I don't feel that, based on the definition of trauma, I don't believe that trauma can be a good thing. I believe that we have to have enough within us to be able to take the trauma and keep it in its perspective and be able to heal from that trauma, because trauma is always negative. Trauma, I've seldom heard anybody be traumatized for being happy, for being at peace. Trauma comes from dis-ease.
I like that.
Imbalance. It comes from something that you are dis-eased about. When you're having traumatic experiences, it doesn't feel good. It's painful. And if you keep that locked up, it's going to manifest into physical challenges for you, not just emotional. Physical challenge, high blood pressure, can even open you up to cancers because you've locked in that energy. It can open you up for a lot of things that will cause physical ailments, or that you come to. And then just your psyche, your mental, your mind. Your mind is what's really at stake. When you don't get the trauma and don't get to the professional help. With narcissism, I was informed that on the mental health scale for psychiatry, psychology, narcissism is right up there with sociopath behavior.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that, I think because one of the things that's happening too, people are using the word narcissist so loosely. If somebody, acts superior, they say, oh, they are narcissists. But when you do the research and you see what narcissism is and what it looks like, some people picture you can put right beside it and you can say, oh, yeah, they are narcissists. And so, even to what you said, a lot of times people don't understand that psychopathic and all that comes along with that can be dangerous. I want to add to what you said when the question was asked, can trauma be a good thing? I'm in agreement with what you said, Isa. One of the things that I know for sure, I've had lots of trauma in my life. Now, I can say, as a person of faith, what the enemy meant for evil, God worked it for my good. Would I have wanted to go the way that I went? Absolutely not. But trauma is not the end of people's story. And that's the good thing about that book that you co-author in, Rising Above Narcissistic Abuse, and even the book as it relates to the DC Sniper. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. I love how the hard things that I have experienced in life, the most challenging things, whether it was losing a child, whether it was going through a divorce, whether it was seeing a child die right in front of my eyes for God to bring that child back to life, whatever I've been through, the trauma of it has given me some grit, some strength, some power, some encouragement. And so now I know it's nothing that I cannot walk through without getting to the other side of it, because the worst things that could have ever happened has already happened. So with that being said, I want to say some things in the chat that are being said that I think is really good. Someone said, having a team, in love says, having a team is how we thrive. We were created to need and support each other. I love this. It's the work that greatness is born. She said, thanks, Isa, for showing us how to thrive beyond trauma. Sherry, good to see you, Sherry. Sherry says, this is a very important topic. Thank you for joining. Jessica Banks, thumbs up. Yes, yes, yes. Shirley Griffin says she loved this answer. So people are engaging in what it is that you're saying. So Isa, you're right on track. JM says unhealed trauma opens you up to being victimized. Oh my goodness, that's so good. Isa, share a little bit with us for the audience who don't know. You have a collective work sharing about your situation with the DC Sniper. Can you give us a synopsis of that? What happened? How were you involved in that? And we're going to talk about that from the side of trauma that you experienced.
Well, the DC Sniper back in 2002, I'm really not a DC Sniper story. Let me say that first.
Okay.
I'm 8 months before the DC shootings in my neighborhood. I knew the DC Sniper, John Allen Muhammad. I knew him personally. They were clients of mine. They were a family. They had their own business. They came in to look for accounting and business tax, business consulting services. And right away, they became my clients. And then over time, when you're usually dealing with people's financial and personal confidential information, you know a lot about them. You become very, very close to them. And so his wife and I, they had a car express repair service. And so she was the administrator, and she was the one that found, that came in to solidify services and so forth. And he was the mechanic. He was a mechanic in the Army station uh, at Fort Lewis, where we live. And so he got out of that and started their own business. Well, over time, and I don't have the time. If you guys want to read the book, read the book. But over time, something went wrong in their marriage, and things weren't right in the business. When you get income statements with your business, they are there for to be an inspection tool on how your business is doing. So there were problems that was being in the business where we have more parts, not enough money for those parts. So there was just imbalances going on. And so brought that to her attention. And that's when first became aware that they were having marital problems. So from that point on, I had been working with her for a while. I kind of showed her how to do the bookkeeping herself, because with those types of things, finances is the big thing that happens when you're going through a lot of marital discourse. So the money was dismal, but I didn't want to let them go as a client. I understand what it's like when things get out of balance and you have to kind of reshift your financial focus. So I set up a way for her to get that information to me, and then I would just do their accounting and so forth. Well, things kind of went on. To make a long story short, I showed up at her home one day. It happened to be the day that I found out that they were no longer together, that they had separated. He was no longer in the home. And there's one casual visit just to stop in to say hello to her and her mom. And that she was planning to divorce him. And with that information, I got all of that information. I started, what do you need? Do you need anything? I'm here to, support you and so forth. Well, one day That particular day, that same day, her children didn't come home from school. He went to pick up the children. She, although going through the whole relationship and all of the separation and stuff, she never brought the children in it. He just couldn't come back and spend time with her. Here's the thing. So we're looking at a domestic abuse situation now, and the children are gone. He takes them out of school, and she doesn't see them again for 18 months. Nobody was expecting that. The case, everything from the time those children didn't return home that day, with their and gone with their father, and for 18 months not knowing where they were, uh, totally diminished her. And so our friendship kind of shifted and catapulted to where I was providing, and I just wasn't going making myself available, and I was just going to be what I thought any good friend would be. I was just basically being myself. And things went on to where she ended up having to be hospitalized because of the traumatization of it all and
Mm.
everything. And to make a long story short, those children were found eventually, and they were extradited back to the United States. By then, she had gotten a divorce by default. She had
Wow.
gotten a child custody, full time, and permission to leave the state of Washington with their children. He never knew anything about that. And so when they found the children, they immediately were released to their mom. She got on a flight, went to the DC area in Maryland, and that's where she was. He eventually found out where she was.
Mm.
And when that particular day that they were in court, I was there with her. She called me that morning, and his wife said, "You know, what can you come with me?" Because she had flown in. She had literally moved back to Maryland when her children were found. So she had to come back to Washington State to retrieve her children. They were in Child Protective Services. So, of course, I said, "Yeah, I'll go with you." Not thinking about anything, not thinking about, let alone narcissistic behavior. We we go into court, and he lost custody of those children, and she got permission to leave the state. And when the judge hit the gavel, he flipped. I seen it in his face. He just had this
Is
blank stare. Her
is
husband,
is that
yes, you
when
know,
not Isa, let me ask you this great information, right? Is that when the hell broke loose and you got to those steps?
no. Yes, it is. You're right. You're
Okay,
right.
take us there.
Yeah. So, are you talking about the steps to when he was when he had lost the children, he went
Mm.
into a traumatic situation.
Right.
Being a narcissist, she had won, so to speak. And he went on this rampage to make everyone pay. And I was the first person that he targeted,
That's what I
where
want you to
he
get to.
came up to those steps, knocked on the door. He sent Lee Malvo, the young
Mm.
accomplice that he lured into his life from Antigua, where he was living, and he had
Mm-hmm.
smuggled into this country. He sent that young man up to the door to look for me. And my niece, who was living with me, opened the door. Her 6-month-old baby was lying
Mm.
upstairs. She opened the door and was shot in the face. But you have to understand, we didn't know who killed Kenya in the beginning. We didn't find out until 8 months later that my niece's murder was connected with John Muhammad and Leroy Malvo. But at that first day, when she opened the door, she saw this young boy. She thought it probably was a friend of my daughter's, who was only 14 at the time. She opened the door, and that boy pulled out a handgun and shot her point blank in the face. We didn't know who shot her, and this was an ongoing investigation that went cold on who killed Kenya Cook. And
Mm.
so 8 months later, we're hearing America is being traumatized by these random shootings on the East Coast, shot at a gas station, shot at stores. I mean, the country shootings shot children. A young man was shot going to school. A young man was pumping gas. Just random shootings. Now you have to remember we had just had 9/11
Right.
in 2001. So
Mm-hmm.
another trauma, the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
here we are. We don't know if it's another terrorist cell, what was going on the East Coast, because people on the West Coast, we were just looking at all of these random shootings.
And this was for people who may not remember, this was the white van that they were living in, sleeping in. Yeah.
But
Share.
it wasn't even a white van. It just, as information was coming out and so and things of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
the white van was wrong. They calculated it was a blue Caprice. It was a blue car
Wow.
that he had taken the seat out, and they carved a hole in it to where they could fit the muzzle of a 747, which is kind of like an M16 military
Mm-hmm.
style weapon, which he was fluent in because he was former military, and he used that. And they would just drive to a scene and just shoot different people, back out, put the seat back up, and drive off in a blue.
Wow.
But all of this, you know, trauma again was now felt in the entire United States.
Mm-hmm.
That started at my front door.
Right.
See, there was 8 months. We were just dealing with an unsolved murder. And then this thing catapults to a
Mm.
national carnage of great proportions. People
Mm-hmm.
just being shot left and right. And we don't know who did it. We literally thought it was something dealing with the um, the Twin Towers and the attack
Mm-hmm.
on American soil.
Wow.
It was the Twin Towers and the Pentagon with those planes. And so everybody was kind of gearing towards that during this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of trauma. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. And in the meantime, Kenya's case is it's closed. They're closing it. After 8 months of investigation and everything, there is no clue on who shot her. And we were all suspects, including me, my husband. Is in the
Wow.
murder investigation, they start the close and then they go out. So we were all suspects. And I mean, we called down into police station conference room, asking our whereabouts, and they're looking for motives. So here we are on the verge. Here I am now. My family is on the verge of a murder investigation, of trying to see what happened to Kenya and who killed her.
How did that turn around?
That turned around when we started seeing John's image. And I knew then, because of my relationship with his wife at the time, I made the connection immediately. And then within
Mm-hmm.
that time, the FBI, same FBI agent that came to talk with Mildred, and I was there, the same agent came to my house to inform me that John and Lee Malvo were in the area, had been in the area, and they were on their radar, whatever that means. But that's when things began to turn around, and we knew then, my husband, our family, we knew then that we somehow it was connected to Kenya's. But we wasn't sure how, but we knew that something was wrong, and that's how we saw John's picture, we made the connection, and he was there to kill his wife. That was
Mm.
his ultimate goal, was to kill his wife. So with that traumatization, and that was one thing. And then after the dealing with the trial, we had to deal with We had to deal with after dealing with the murder, we had to deal with the trial.
Mhm.
And that was later going on and so forth. And things began to turn around for me after the trial. And during that
Mhm.
time, you have to understand my 14-year-old daughter was the first one to find her cousin lying on the floor with a bullet in her face. So we had been into counseling, therapy, found a child therapist who had just retired. She was the only African American and she was female to deal with adolescents. And she came out of retirement to counsel my daughter and I. And we went into therapy. And I must say that, again, a lot of African Americans don't believe when we go through trauma to go get
Mhm.
therapy. I was told, well, she's not crazy. You're not crazy. And I'm like, you're right. We're still going to go so that we don't become crazy. How
Mhm.
about that? I had to kind of flip the dialogue because that was the sentiment of me and my daughter who had experienced this thing at the front door when we went to therapy. She's too young. Think this is the mindset. This is the mental mindset of folks that I
Mm.
heard come out of their mouths. Well, do you really think she needs therapy? Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Wow.
even told my pastor at the church, I this is great care, this is great counseling, but I'm
Mhm.
going to go to a therapist, a psychiatrist,
And get
one
help.
with to get our help.
Mhm.
It's beyond. I feel that God gave us the ability to heal ourselves through herbs. He's given us the ability to have the language and the mindset and the
Mhm.
studies. I was grateful. I thought the therapist, that the psychologist was a gift from God to help me through this trauma in my family
Right.
and my
Right.
14-year-old. That's how I was looking at it. So things kind of shifted into that. But one of the things that I got out of that is that I was willing to become daring, if you will, in my life to bring change to everything and everyone around me
Mhm.
after that incident. I really did. I mean, despite what was against me, regardless of who believed what I said, no matter the cost or the sacrifice or the challenge, I wanted to challenge myself to be better.
Wow.
So it kind
Wow.
of goes back to
Mhm.
trauma is not a good thing, but it can lead and catapult you, according to what I believe it was Karen or KK that put in
Mhm.
the chat, going back to what she asked. It's not a good thing, but depending on your mindset, you can turn it around. You
Absolutely.
you can go from, after therapy, you can deal with the heartbreaks and the hurts. And because they don't heal fast. We have to allow the pain to be felt and all of these types of things. And those things can propel you through getting yourself up. And the first thing my therapist did was get me to journaling. I had to get this stuff out of me. And do you
Mhm.
realize that I'll say this for her? It took me 4 months of seeing her before I came to her one day with something in my journal. I had been going uh, once a week for 4 months. I'd been in there. And every time she'd like, well, did you write anything in your journal? And I was like, no, I didn't. And I'm going to do it. I'm working on it. And so the one time I did start writing the journal, I wrote for 12 hours. I ate and
Oh.
took a shower, but it didn't stop. And so I went to the appointment and I gave her the journal and she did something like this. She just took my stuff and just put it on the side. And I'm like, I done spent 12 hours doing this journal. And she said, Isa, that was for you.
I love that. I love that because a lot of times people go to therapy or they're working with a coach and they're journaling and they're doing the assignments and they're ready to say, I did my work, I did my assignment. But the journaling was to get out of you
It
some of
was
the
for me.
trauma, right? The disappointment for you to, just purge yourself. And I like some of the comments that are being shared as well. Miss Myers said prior to COVID, psychologists was already reporting that 158 million people in the US was affected by narcissistic abuse. Um,
Mm.
we see other people are talking about, Nico says, what helped you out in the valley moments? Um, what tools and resources do you use towards healing and maintaining? And I want to read a couple of these and then we'll jump back. Sadly, as a culture, we don't understand our minds govern our bodies. When our mind isn't well, no aspect of us will be well. Oh, that is so powerful. We understand what you're saying. That is so powerful. I see someone even ask in the darkest of times, um what are some of your thinking was in the darkest of time, and you shared some of that, how you had to get through it, you had to trust the process, you had to journal, you had to see a therapist. I think I want to shift and ask you a question as it relates to when we think about the platform mindset to millions. How does trauma affect you from getting to your money? How does trauma affect you from having a healthy mindset? So we talked a lot about that as it relates to trauma itself. Now we're seeing a therapist, we're reading our books, we're on Audible, and we got different books to help us shift our mindset. Okay, we're in mastermind groups that are elevating our thoughts. We're collaborating in communities with other people. Isa and I, we're going to Detroit next month, and we're going to be with a large group of multi-millionaires speaking on large stages, platforms at Michigan State. We're going to have a ball. So when you get to the point where you're walking out of the trauma, how do we sustain that so it does not affect our finances, so it does not affect us in shrinking back? How do you maintain once you come out on the other side? And you talked a little bit about coming out on the other side. How do you maintain that?
Well, you have to put things in priority. You may not
Mm.
maintain it. You may need to let it go to save your own life. Part of trauma reconciliation is truth telling. I had it all, Tammie. I had the home, brand new home, built from the ground up. I was driving my 2.5 cars, BMW, Mercedes. I had done those things to get the American dream on my way. I had one daughter that we had sent to college. Those types of things I we had as a family the living the American dream. We both worked hard because being in the military is no joke. I was a spouse, a supportive spouse to a spouse that was deployed most of his military career. So I was left alone to raise the children, and so sometimes it's really not about holding on. I had to let it all go. And that was brilliancy to get to the point to know how to let all of this go and work on me.
Now, was that through your divorce when you say you let it all go?
All of it. I couldn't, if the divorce got to the point, I mean, it got to where it was his life or mine. And I chose
Mm.
mine. And I mean, I did time on my suicide couch, y'all. Let's be real. I contemplated the act. I had pills with a glass of Cognac, I was serious. I'd been at that level already. And so when you get to the point to where you are not, I just got to the point that I am not going to go out like this. And so when we get to the point of deposits, I was way overdrawn and had been for quite some time emotionally in terms of a life reconciliation. I had been putting, and see, these things were going on before. You can imagine what it was like after the tragedy. The communication wasn't there. I could not sustain. The pain was so great. And I don't take anything away because this was my niece through marriage. This was my husband's sister's youngest child.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of things that I felt so guilty about. This woman lost her child in my house. She was living there, so that she can get on her feet with her little baby and things. So here I was, to answer your question, I had to wait. Did I want to hold on to all of this stuff when I know emotionally I was withdrawn, overdrawn? Spiritually, I was overdrawn. Financially, because I wasn't able to work, I was self-employed. And self-employed, you are the one that has to be doing the work to get the funding in. Mm-hmm. And so when that was slacking off because I didn't have the ability to focus anymore, my pain was so great, I had to look at this balance sheet of life and I had to choose something different. One thing that I did know is that if I could get it once, I could get it again.
Oh, that's powerful. I love that. I want to interject right there. You said one thing you realize, if you got it before, you could get it again. And you shifted and you said you had to save yourself. Either he was going to die or you was going to die, but you knew that you had to save yourself. So many people are in the chat. This is really good stuff. You let go when you know. Oh my goodness. Hadash says you let go when you know that you know. Very informative information. Thanks for sharing. Tammy says, how can people reach you? I put your website in the chat, but somebody may want a book. I put your website in the chat, but you may tell them to go somewhere else to get it. Somebody may want a consultation with you. Someone may want to learn more about how can they transition through and out of their trauma. How can people get in contact with you is what I want to know.
I have my websites, of course, IsaFarringtonNichols.com, where you can actually book a discovery call, a free 30-minute discovery call with me. You book the call, you go in there and you book that call, and you will be get sent information to have a 30-minute free Zoom with me. And it's just that, it's a discovery call. And my job,
nice.
and the whole reason behind the discovery is just that. You need to do just like how I did. I had to discover. It's a discovery to realize that I had it once, I can get it again. I discovered that there was nothing more important than me. I had to discover that.
And you can help them do that.
And I can guide them. Exactly.
Yes.
I
love it.
love being a guide.
I love it.
I have a bachelor's degree. I'm college educated, but I will work with people that have those credentials. And I've had them on a lot of my trainings and so forth. I require them when I'm speaking because I usually poke a boil. And I need someone in the mental health profession from their community to be right there for them.
I love it. I love it.
And so
I love
The
it,
first
Isa.
thing I
I
would
love
do
it.
is do a discovery call with me.
Okay.
We can, and basically, I'm going to listen because that's what we want. We want somebody to just listen. That's what I wanted. That's why I put that in there.
And a
I
lot of
want,
people don't have that. I think in our last 3 minutes, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to be heard. Let me ask you this, because I don't want to miss this before we close out. Your book, can they get your books from your website?
yes, you can get your books on your website. If you do your discovery call and decide that you want to work with me one on one, the books are included in your package for that, and we use the books as kind of required reading material and so forth and so on,
Awesome.
and then we focus on you. So either way,
Awesome.
you're going to get a book. You can order it through the website. It will be sent to you, autographed. You can order it through Amazon.com. KDP, I believe is the Amazon. Amazon has kind of outsourced all of that. But anyway, you can get that through there. But I prefer people to get it to order it through the website. That way I can personalize it for you. I can autograph it and get
Perfect.
it out into the mail to you. But
Perfect.
start with that discovery, that free 30-minute discovery call with me on isafarringtonnichols.com.
Awesome. I love this. And so, even in our closing, I want to say, Isa, thank you so much. You shared so much. The chat is filled with comments, people really engaged in this conversation. And I want to thank you for taking the time to come. You heard her website. She's going to be speaking on some upcoming stages. Follow her, follow her. I want to say, looking in the chat, Veronica talked about it's important to seek a therapist after you go through a traumatic experience. Absolutely, event helps you with your emotions and so far and so on. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Genesis talked about the book Restore. So many great things. And Latasha said, great information. We're on our last 60 seconds. Thank you for joining Mindset to Millions. Thank you to our special guest, Isa Farrington, who's extraordinary, who lived to tell the story and has shared with us how to move forward. Reach out to her. She's a great resource. And I really appreciate you for joining us. Come on back next Monday night, 8 p.m. I'll see you then. Make it a great one. Bye now.